joining our presentation. My name is Boram, and I'm a postdoc at UCLA School of Nursing. Next slide, please. So betel nut is a seed of areca palm, which has an addictive stimulant effect. Because of the effect, betel nut is like fourth common substance next to the caffeine, nicotine, and alcohol worldwide. Southeast Asian countries such as Myanmar are one of the largest consumers of betel nut, and betel nut chewing in Myanmar is considered cultural identity and essential part of the social life. For example, it's widely accepted as an alternative medicine to refresh their breath after meal or treating morning sickness or indigestion. However, betel nut has been listed as a group 1 carcinogen, and many studies have been shown the strong link between the betel nut chewing and oral or oropharyngeal cancers. Also, betel nut who use the people who use the betel nut chewing are nearly 3 times higher being reported at HIV diagnosis, and also those user at higher risk of suffering anxiety or depression. So therefore, through this study, we wanted to identify the factor influencing betel nut chewing in Burmese people living with HIV. Next, please. So this study was a secondary analysis study. We used the data from our team collected in Myanmar 2020. And the study purpose, we only included people who were HIV diagnosed and people who were not diagnosed with HIV, and unknown HIV status were excluded from the study. Next, please. The all measures were in the concept, including physical hyperarousal symptom and HIV stigma and loneliness, depression, and stress that had been shown the high internal consistency. And the economist variable was used to measure our outcome variable that asked whether they used the betel nut or not. Next, please. Total sample was 169 with an age range between 18 to 55 years old, and 60 were men, and 63% reported being heterosexual. Nearly half of the participants had a high school education, and there were interesting the socio-demographic the characteristics in this sample. And among the total sample, 35% reported that they were diagnosed with AIDS. And the majority of the participants were on HIV med and with the recent undetectable viral load status. And however, 42% didn't disclose their HIV status to their family, and nearly 90% didn't have a health insurance at all. And compared to the other substance, betel nuts were one of the most common substance that they used. And all among independent variable, only loneliness remained significant to the betel nut use. Sorry for the little bit cracking the PowerPoint. I just realized it. Next, please. For the SAM analysis, there were indirect effect of HIV stigma through the physical hyperarousal symptom on betel nut use after controlling for covariate, which was age and gender, their other socio-demographic status, which can be expected from the literature, and then similar pattern with the other substances for alcohol or cigarette. Next, please. In general, loneliness is more prevalent in people living with HIV because of the discrimination against the HIV. And especially Burmese people with HIV face the stronger stigma and social isolation due to the Asian culture taboo about sex. And this finding may be explained by increasing their betel nut use as one of the coping strategy to reduce their stress from their negative experience in daily life. And future studies should develop the intervention targeted for mixed people with HIV, then they need to include the content of the stigma and loneliness reduction and cancer risk awareness of bitter use as well. Thank you. Next slide. Next, please. And thank you. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any additional question after this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice job keeping on time. And so we have, I think, 2 to 3 minutes to have some questions. I have a couple questions.
Sure.
About the legal status of betel nuts and whether or not it's really considered an illicit substance there. I think that would be really helpful, just to sort of frame that.
Oh, sure. That's really good question. Like, I actually was not really aware of betel nut use prevalence in Myanmar, but actually that was not really listed as some like legal or illegal substance. That because of that, it's like a lot cheaper to people can buy compared to the like cigarette or like other component. And then there was no like because of no legal the listed as a substance, I think even minor as a teenager can like just buy at the like store and like grabbing it. So like that can be more like a risky or a problem in like this situation in Myanmar.
Questions from the audience?
Yes, sorry, obtained. But my question is regarding as a HIV counselor, one of the things that I've noticed is certain trends that has been happening. For instance, a person may start, by smoking, they may not smoke, then, then a few months later, they start to smoke cigarette, later it move on to marijuana, later on it move on, oh yeah, I did poppers, oh, and then it move on, oh yeah, I try meth because I was hanging out with somebody, and then you will find that over a period of time, it changes over a period of time. And so has there been any looked into in particular poppers? I don't know what's the scientific name for it, but has there been any focus on the implementation of the use of poppers into sexual activity and HIV transmission and the role that plays with individuals? Because one of the questions that I do get a lot from persons is, oh, is poppers a substance? And I'm kind of in between, like I want to tell them yes and I want to tell them no, but I tell them it does kind of can give you a feeling of unawareness in that moment. So it kind of can be, but it's not considered. So I don't know, where would that be placed? And what is the steps in looking at the implication it has into HIV STI transmission?
Thanks. I think maybe just even talking about the use of other substances with betel nuts would be helpful. Poppers is one of them, but maybe not so common in Myanmar, but any other sort of co-use.
Sure. Yeah, that's a really great question. Actually, not only like people use the betel nut itself, there is like a lot of a form of the bitter quid, like QUID. So like there is a like liquid form or like something, sometimes like they use a leaf to like rolling together with the content with the like cigarettes. So like there's a lot of like combination form that people make it to make more like stronger, because this is a like addictive stimulant, the effect that like bitter nut has, like people more wanting to have like stronger ones. So like I think there is a like various form, and like from the literature I remember like some people like even put it even like use a bitter nut as a like caffeinated beverage to like combine it together. So it has like various
Great.
thing, and we consider this is like still addictive as a like substance. That's
Thank
how
you.
I
Yeah, that's
understand.
good.
But like I'm
So,
not sure.
That's very helpful. Now we have to move to our next presentation, though. So thank you very much, and we can hopefully come back to some more questions. So Amanda Miller is next. Go ahead.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Amanda Miller and I am a postdoctoral fellow at San Diego State University. And today I'm here to talk to you about substance use and its association with intimate partner violence risk among men who have sex with men in Los Angeles, California. Next slide, please. So substance use is a risk factor for intimate partner violence. And this is especially problematic among persons living with HIV because substance use and intimate partner violence both are associated with poor HIV care outcomes, and they're also both associated with increased risk of onward HIV transmission. To date, most of the intimate partner violence research that has been conducted has occurred in male-female dyads, so heteronormative relationships. And this is a serious gap in the literature because 1 in 3 MSM have actually experienced intimate partner violence, and we know that the prevalence of HIV in this population is high relative to other populations. So characterizing violence among MSM could provide critical insight for developing targeted intimate partner violence screening programs, which could be potentially integrated into HIV service delivery. The present study explored associations between substance use and intimate partner violence in a large cohort of MSM in Los Angeles. Next slide, please. We analyzed data from the M study. So the M study was a NIDA-funded cohort study that was conducted from 2014, and it's starting in 2014, and it's ongoing. Half of participants were substance users by design, and half were persons living with HIV. Our analytic sample was restricted to to data collected prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, so from 2014 through March 2020. And our primary exposure of interest was recent drug use, which was used a reference period of the past 6 months. And we grouped substance use into 4 mutually exclusive categories. The first was stimulant use, and you could report other drug use as well, as long as you reported use of a stimulant. The second category was THC use only. The third was all other drug use, and the fourth was reporting no drug use at all. Next slide, please. Okay, so unfortunately, it looks like an outdated version of my slides is included in here. So this is not the conceptual model that was meant to be included. We had updated it a little bit. So let's just focus on the text. So the outcomes of interest for this study were physical and sexual intimate partner violence in the past 6 months. And to measure, and our our covariates of interest included age, race, unstable housing, experiences of engaging in transactional sex in the past 3 months, treatment as prevention, which was measured as either use of PrEP among persons who were HIV negative or being virally suppressed among persons that were HIV positive, and depression as measured by the CESD. And to look at our associations of interest, we ran unadjusted and adjusted HIV stratified multivariable models using generalized estimating equations to look at the longitudinal associations between substance use and partner violence outcomes, adjusting for repeated measurement and confounders. Next slide, please. Okay, so we had a total of 557 persons included in our analytic sample, and this included a total of 2,962 visits, and the median baseline age was 30 years. Recent stimulant use, THC use, and heroin use were reported by 46%, 60%, and 4% of participants respectively. 20% reported physical IPV at baseline, and 11% reported sexual IPV at baseline. And I can tell you that looking across visits, it was about 18% that reported physical IPV across visits, while 7.5% reported sexual violence. Stimulant use we found that stimulant use was associated with greater odds of physical but not sexual intimate partner violence. And we also found that depression, age, and engaging in transactional sex were also associated with partner violence. And as you can see in this figure on the left, okay, so these are now my updated slides. Sorry guys. So this is the updated conceptual model that I had meant to include. And I know for time's sake, we should probably just move forward. So we'll just make sure that maybe the updated slides are available online if we're posting the slides. And the way that physical and sexual IPV were measured is listed on this slide. So physical IPV was a single question: have you been hit, kicked, or slapped by a lover, boyfriend, or girlfriend in the past 6 months? And then we asked specifically, you know, when that person meant to hurt you physically. And then sexual violence was also asked with a 6-month time frame. Next slide, please. Okay, so now instead of reporting from baseline, this is the prevalence of our covariates across visits. So 50% of participants had scores indicative of depression at their visits. 48% were viral, had treatment as prevention, meaning they were on PrEP. 43% were not virally suppressed. 14% had engaged in transactional sex. Just over half were unstably housed, and just under half were HIV positive. Next slide, please. Okay. Oh, good. See, so I remembered the prevalence of sexual IPV correctly, even though I wasn't looking at it. So on the right side of this slide, you can see the adjusted odds ratios, and the main purpose of this figure, just to move quickly through it, is to show you that the odds of the association between stimulant use and IPV were greater among persons living with HIV than those not living with HIV, but they were statistically significant in both samples. Next slide. Okay, so to just quickly wrap up, we identified a very high prevalence of partner violence in this population, which is consistent with the existing literature. We also found that stimulant use, being younger, and experiencing depression and engaging in transactional sex were all associated with experiences of IPV, which is also consistent with the existing literature. And in terms of thinking about next steps, in order to really effectively intervene on partner violence in this population, what we really need is greater insight into the context of violence within couples, same-sex couples. So we really need to understand more about whether or not this violence is consensual versus unwanted, if aggression is ever manifested as a form of sexual dominance, and to also better understand the extent of gendered power dynamics in same-sex relationships. Next slide, please. And so in conclusion, IPV programming may have the greatest impact among MSM if we integrate it into HIV care services, since the association was stronger among persons living with HIV. And we also identified several other additional factors that that were associated with increased risk of experiencing violence. So qualitative work to better understand how and why violence happens in these couples would help to inform intervention programming. And finally, making sure to capture data among dyads would provide further insight. Okay, sorry that was all over, everybody. And I'm sorry I probably went over too. Thanks.